Smite 2 has a serious problem. Now, a few of you are gonna sit there and say, the game existing at all is a problem. And to that I say, okay buddy, let's go back to the padded room, the nice nurse is waiting for you. I'm sure that if I ran a poll on the people that aren't playing Smite 2 at the moment, there would be a variety of different issues that would come to light. The game is buggy, my favorite character isn't in the game, why the fuck does Ganesh aspect hit for 1800 damage? All valid to some extent or another, but in my opinion, Smite 2's biggest issue is its presentation. And what exactly do I mean by this? Well, this is the Conquest map. And frankly, I don't think this is really cutting it. And this isn't to say anything about the current meta of the map because that's its own separate video. Quick disclaimer before I get into it. Do not misconstrue this as me shitting on Smite 2 as a game. In fact, as of recording this, I have 665 hours in Smite 2. But in order for the things we love to get better, and the fact that this game is in a beta, critiquing the things you don't like about the game is healthy. And that means critique, not baby raging about skins. And with that out of the way, take a look at this. While there can be detail to be found around the map, those details tend to be islands in a sea of nothing. My main point of concern is the jungle in particular. Ever since the asset reduction in Closed Alpha 3, something has always been off about the jungle to me. And while in my last review of the game I kinda came to a conclusion that foliage density was the issue, that doesn't paint the whole picture. When I say that all these elements seem like an island in a sea of nothing, it's because everything is disjointed. Yes, we got environment art for the camps a couple months ago, but these camps don't seem to flow together very well. In particular, the purple buff, which seems a lot more involved than the others. Let's draw a comparison. I'm going to take you back the better part of a decade, back to 2018. God, I'm fucking old. This is the behind the scenes look at the Season 5 Conquest map. While I'm not expecting the map to look as good as a game that was public for almost 6 years, I found a couple of the things in this video interesting about the design philosophy of this map.
We're making a lot of changes to the jungle to make the paths more narrow and include more twists and turns. The environment is going to have a very different feel that's more enclosed and intimidating, and jungle fog is making its return to just add to the tension of being in the jungle.
When players were going from lane to lane, it would be a lot more of a dangerous area. So we wanted to also create a forest that was a little bit more expanded onto the lore and the universe of Smite.
You're gonna see completely...
And I'm just gonna be frank. What happened? What happened to this design philosophy? It seems that from this point, they actually carried it on into the future maps of Smite 1, but why not into Smite 2? Look, I'm no artist, I'm just trying to give a layman's perspective, but let me ask this. What is this map trying to portray? Not from a gameplay perspective, but from an artistic perspective. Why is the fire giant pit a volcanic monolith in a sea of grass? Why does the purple buff have random spooky trees that don't fit with the rest of the map? Why is the jungle so clear and open? In its current state, this map looks less like a battleground of the gods and more like a LARP in the woods. And I know I'm making this seem a little more knee-jerk than it needs to be. Considering the dire state of the closed alphas, the game needed to get better. And I'm pretty sure general environment improvements were pretty low on that long list of priorities. But as time goes on and gameplay gets better at a rapid pace, stuff like this starts to make its way to the light. To highlight a little bit of this missing design philosophy, I decided to take a stroll through the current Smite 1 map. As you can see, while the geometry is dated and simple, there is a lot more detail and little Easter eggs to find. Look, I'm not gonna sit here and glaze the bubble trees as if they are the greatest thing ever. God damn. But as I've said in the past, they add to the jungle experience. Another cool little detail that you see on the solo side of the map is that as you get closer to the industrial fire giant pit, there is far less foliage and grass. This gives the impression that this was intentionally cleared out to build this giant structure for the fire giant. Alternatively, on the opposite side of the map, you can find pockets of gold that reach far beyond the Gold Fury's pit. Smashed up crates, carts, and a shipwreck on the side of the map can also suggest that the Gold Fury had been plundering its gold from these sources. And much like the purple buff in Smite 2, the purple buff here is overgrown. However, the overgrown vines fit far better into the environment. Am I just spitting 9th grade English teacher analysis at this? Okay, maybe. For all I know, none of this could have been intended and was just a happy accident. But all these tiny glints of detail let the mind run a little, and it contributes immensely to the immersion that one gets playing a standard Conquest game. Immersion in my Ninja Turtle Avatar Stranger Things game? Yes, now shut up. Now, can some of these things be remedied with the current art set of the map? I would argue yes, but with some caveats. First off, it has been mentioned in the past that the lighting needs to be updated. Second, new versions of trees need to be added that have overhangs that block off certain sightlines of the jungle. As shown, this has been done to success in the past, and as long as it's not overdone like it was in the alpha weekend, it will have the same effect of visual clarity that Smite 1 had. And third, new assets may need to be created to tell those little stories on each side of the map. Little knickknacks like barrels and crates. Warning, incredibly shitty Photoshop incoming. Don't take these images as completely serious, but more of an illustration of what I'm trying to get at. When boiled down to its very basic parts, what I want is for the jungle to feel more like the jungle did in the past. Darker and narrower towards the bases, but more open when it comes to the objectives, as obviously that's when you need the most visual clarity. Enemies at a distance already disappear when they're in the jungle, but it's a lot more uncanny when there's no fog of war to obscure them. Considering the discourse around the mechanics of the map and the amount of farm present, I can understand if these things get pushed back further a little bit. But I'm almost certain that a refresher on the way that the Conquest map looks will be a lot more inviting to new players in the future. From my experience, in the past couple of months, I've been helping 4 new players play the game, and they think that the Conquest map is easily the worst looking game. Joust is the best in their opinion, but Conquest, it just ain't cutting it. And this is probably because the Joust map actually does follow that design philosophy of telling a story. Everything present in the behind the scenes look is present in the Joust map, except for the Fog of War, but that's because it doesn't really fit. And minus the terrible Season 7 Joust map, didn't exist. But this is all just what I think. I welcome a discourse on the topic in the comment section of this video. Do you agree? Disagree? Do you have different ideas on how the map should look? Is there anything that you would add to my suggestions? And on the off chance that you're a developer of the game and you see this video, provide as much insight as you're legally allowed to give. I would love to know what goes into this. I love Smite 2. In fact, I think that it's better than Smite 1 in a lot of ways, but in this way, it's clearly lacking. I have no doubts that it'll get better in the future. All I'm asking is that some of us that think that the map is looking a little barren are thrown a little bit of a bone.